All right, first is our school norms, and I've asked Dan if he could read those for us this morning, or this evening.
The board developed norms are to share and respect varied opinions and speak with a united voice once a decision has been reached, to prudently prioritize resources in a student-centric manner that aligns with the district's strategic plan, to exhibit a mindset of continuous improvement through adequate preparation for meetings and commitment to board education, to commit to assessing board effectiveness to ensure high-quality governance for the staff, students, and community of Jamestown.
Thank you. Next is, are there any conflict of interest as you've reviewed the agenda and the information contained in the meeting? Okay, we're all good there. Item 2 is the consent agenda, where we consider several items. If there is an item that you wish to pull off and speak specifically to, we can do that. Otherwise, we can approve those items A through E. We have a motion by Roger. Second by Jason to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now to our regular meeting. Item 3, recognition. I don't think we have any items there. Correspondence, I don't believe we have any items there. So we're down to item C, which is reports, and we have Superintendent Dr. Leck's report.
Thank you. You have my written report. I'll go through some of these areas a little more in depth than others. I provided the health and safety updates just to give you that generalized trend data that we've been continuing to keep and report on every Friday. Pretty consistent data. It is trending down a little bit from where it has been in the last couple of weeks, so that's certainly good news, but it's still generally in that same range. Study group for leave, we had our first meeting last week on the 26th. We really had some good initial conversations. Just as a reminder, that is part of an agreement that was in negotiations. We're studying all of the leave. Essentially what we're doing is we're taking every leave in the negotiated agreement, every leave in policy, and we're simply reviewing them all and saying, what is this leave, is there any areas we need to discuss related to this leave, everything from jury duty to sick leave bank. And if there's any areas that we want to have greater conversation in, then we start to have those conversations. We're really in our infancy now, but there's some areas that we're going to want to gather leave examples from other districts, like sick leave bank, for example. We're gonna gather some exemplars from other school districts, look at those, look at ours, and see if there's something we can take away from those other examples. In others, we're simply going to look at them and say, yes, it's meeting its need. Things like jury duty. We had a chance to look at that, and yeah, it's meeting our needs, so we don't need to have any more conversations about that. But in my mind, the whole focus or the whole purpose of the study group is to examine everything. So let's just look at it all, and if we need to go have greater conversations, we will. As I had mentioned before, it's not the purpose to replace negotiations related to leave. It's a place for conversations to be held and discussions to be had. If there's an agreement around those areas, one of those policies or leave, we might bring that to the negotiations in our next cycle as a recommendation on my administrative memo, because this is a representative group. But it still comes to those at that table to have those conversations, but it comes as a recommendation, or could come as a recommendation if there is something that comes from that group. I have included the superintendent evaluation timeline, at least where you're at this juncture. I did provide a little bit more information related to e-care. You'll have a cost proposal, or you'll have an agenda topic on this later, and I want to make sure that we provide all the detail we need to move forward. At least my recommendation is to move forward. I think it is really has potential to be a great program to fill the gap that we see. We're very fortunate to have student nursing in place, but that's one FTE for 5 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school. Those folks can't be everywhere. Deb does a great job, but she can't teleport from building to building. And there are services she can do and there are services she can't, just because there's one of her. What this e-care proposal would do is provide e-care services in one pilot elementary building. And so they would use a nurse on the other end. It's essentially similar to telehealth, although probably a little bit more advanced than that, and try that in one building. I feel very confident that we would be able to access a grant to pay for a pretty significant portion of that over the next 3 years. The cost of the district would be approximately $6,000, I believe is what I put. Well, $3,100 if we were able to access this grant. And I think, like I said, I think it's really a very good chance. But at the same time, we can't, until we receive a grant, we can't bank on having that. And it's a pilot that I'd like to try regardless. So that would be a fairly higher cost, but I still think it would be worth to try it as a pilot. We certainly see the need to have a little additional support in that area as well, but I'd certainly stand for questions if there were any. My recommendation would be the elementary pilot at Louis L'Amour, just because of the grant that we would access, and it just makes sense. But I'd stand for questions if there are any related to e-care. Okay, I'm going to move on. The College and Career Lab, I was doing an observation at the high school, and I was really blown away by a new program that they've started at the high school in the counseling department, providing more awareness in college and careers for our high school students. It's really a byproduct of the restructure of counseling and the additional counseling FTE that we've added through ESSER. But they are, and I've provided some links. Hopefully you've uploaded those. I saw that I had an incomplete area if you looked at this weekend, and I did complete that and upload it today. So if you haven't had a chance to upload, please do that, because I have a little bit more information in there for you. But October was Healthcare Month. That means that they brought in a number of different speakers in the areas of healthcare. Students sign up, leave their classrooms to see these presentations. They range 20 to 30 minutes, and they can be a handful of students that might have interest in an area, as many as 20, 25 students that are interested in these areas. They reported to me that 100 students throughout the course of October took advantage of this opportunity to go see an area of interest that might be an athletic trainer. If you look at the October link that I provided, you can see the different examples. Like I said, they range from athletic training to rad tech, a college that focuses on health. There was somebody from Stanford, behavioral health, BSc, an area of biology, a lot of different areas. I won't read them all, but you can have a chance to see nursing. So the students, if they're interested in that area or think they may be interested in one of those areas, can go and check that out. And then there's a presenter from that area giving them information, allowing them to ask questions. And again, I think this is a great program, or a great new initiative, something that, like I said, is a direct byproduct of those counselors having more time. They're not just triaging what's happening during the day-to-day requirements. They're actually able to plan and organize this type of activity. I think it's great. Scholarship month is November, and that includes 45 students taking work keys assessments. Those are part of the responsibilities for the CTE scholarship. December is Career Inventory, Exploration, and Job Skills Month. And this is kind of in its infancy, so they have not extended that schedule beyond 2021. So January and beyond, they'll share that schedule with me when they have it, but they're looking at CTE, IT, and then other areas of interest that students have outlined that they want more information on. So again, I think it's a great thing. I'm happy to share it with you, and we'll provide more updates if I get them and when I get them. I provided a little bit of information on ESSER funding, not that we need to talk about this again. I just think it's important that our legislators are fully aware of where Jamestown Public is spending ESSER dollars and that pathway I shared with them. The pathway I shared a couple of meetings ago with the charts, but also the specific information, what we've applied for, how we're repurposing some of those dollars. We want to make sure that they're fully aware of those, so when they go into their special session here coming up and they're talking about ESSER, they have adequate and accurate information in terms of what JPS is doing. And I'm hopeful that other school districts are sharing that information as well. The facility project updates, I'm just going to hold off on that because that is an agenda topic. And the revised regular board meeting schedule, there is a revision that's on the agenda later. And that's simply changing the date, our one meeting in December from the 6th to the 20th. And that's really because we don't believe our auditors will be able to present the audit findings at an early December meeting. And we believe that they'll be able to make that work on the third Monday in December. So that's the only change. That's the only change on the revised regular meeting schedule. And that's the rationale. So with that, I'd stand for questions.
Any questions for Dr. Leck? Hearing none, let's move on to item D, Board Education. We have the educational competency role of the instructional coaches. We have Jada Anderson and Natalie Schrader here too.
Surprise, you have somebody else here.
Okay.
It's
okay.
me again. Yes. This
okay.
is Mrs. Jade. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's what I wanted you to do, just give us names.
Yes, this is Mrs. Jada Anderson, and she's an instructional coach. This is Mrs. Emma Mickelson, and she is a third grade teacher at Washington.
Okay,
I'm Jennifer Young, and I'm a principal at Washington.
awesome.
So we are here to speak on behalf of an instructional coach and what their role is in our district. And education has evolved quite a bit since I went to school, since I was even trained as an educator. And so instructional coaches have come along in the last decade across the nation, the state of North Dakota. And it's essentially to help teachers and administrators to support all the new initiatives we have. I'm sure you've noticed, if you've been on the board, a lot of new things have come across. Teachers are expected to do quite a bit. And so we have hired several instructional coaches to support that. So I'm going to quick give you a handout. And then I'll speak a little bit on behalf of what.
Thank you.
I will just speak a little bit on behalf of how the administrators, how she supports me in my role. It's not just for teachers, but it's also, she can see things from a different perspective sometimes. So Jada is in my building, so we do a ton of collaboration. On the back side, if you see it says administrative support. She works a lot on making data-driven decisions. We're looking at, we have implemented FastBridge, so we look at those decisions. What does our data tell us? How are we going to make groups with our students? She does all the legwork, which is really helpful, and she brings it to me, and then we decide on what would be best for our school. This is the same practice that's happening across all the schools at Jamestown. Intervention placements, curricular resources. She is right now our expert in the curriculum. They have to learn all of the curriculum and know how to help teachers implement that and support teachers in that way. Teachers, it's hard for them to know how to be perfect at everything, you know, especially elementary. They're teaching all the different content areas. So as we implement guided reading, which is our newest initiative, or Steve Dunn writing, they become the experts so they can support teachers. They provide differentiated instruction for the teachers. If a teacher comes to them and says, I need help in this content area, they have the ability to support that, which is incredibly helpful. We want to do that for our students, but we also need to do it for our teachers. Professional development is what they do a lot of. They're always encouraging teachers to try new things. They go in and support. They might even team teach it. They might go in and teach it, model it so the teachers can see what's happening. And it aligns with Marzano's Domain 1, which is the evaluation tool that we use in Jamestown. And I will let Jada take over.
Hi. So just based off of what she talked about too, how coaching has evolved since I've been here. So I've been in Jamestown for 9 years now. So I was in the classroom for 6. So this is my 3rd year as an instructional coach in my time. I've seen how instructional coaching has changed within our district as well. Now having 3 at the elementary level, it allows us to spend more time with teachers. And that's really what they need. They need more time with us, and we need more time with them to support them better. So I have the ability to sit and meet with teachers more frequently and talk about things that they're experiencing, that they're having problems with, or things that they would like to try something different. So I have that time, and my schedule allows me to have more flexibility so I can meet when they are available, not with their rigid schedules, because they teach most of the day, right? Some of the things that I have done, and if you go back to the front side, our state has kind of adopted an instructional coaching model, and so I went to a coaches academy that kind of walked us through. So these are the 8 roles that we are identified as having. I wear a different hat at different times, or I can wear multiple hats at the same time. So I kind of try to support teachers through this. A lot of the stuff that I would say I focus on at the beginning of the year is a lot of data. So I try to make sure that we have data on our students, and what can we do with that data to help support them. Jamestown is currently considered an MTSS school, so we have multiple levels that allow us to support our kids different ways. And so I work a lot with teachers to figure out, what do Tier 1 kids need? So what do we look at for our whole class? What are some things that kids just need a little bit of support? So how can we support them a little bit compared to some of our kids that are falling a little bit farther behind? And how do we get them that extra support where they need a lot more time with us? A lot of times I have to come in and do some curriculum work with teachers. And so again, I have to know almost every grade level. I try to find out as much as I can for them to support them with anything that they have curriculum based. And again, I also do a lot of modeling for teachers. So if a teacher is unsure of what something might look like or how it's going to feel or look in their classroom, it's an opportunity for me to go in and plan with them. And then I get to take on the teaching role, and I teach for them so they get to observe and see how the class interacts and just get an outside perspective, because sometimes you teach a lesson and it falls apart on you. Well, I want to be that person for them that steps in and say, let me try. Let's see if I can work through it differently. And then you'll have an opportunity to reflect on that situation and see if you would like to do it differently, or we can talk through that. I also feel like I'm an idea bouncer. I'm able to meet with teachers so that they can bounce ideas off me. They want to try something new, and I'm sure Emma might talk about some of that. Is they're not really sure which way to go, and so they just need that little extra nudge to say, yep, let's try it. If we fail, we'll fix it. It's okay. We just got to keep working through this, and we have to figure out what's going to be best for your classroom and for our students. On the other side, I have a coaching menu. That's just something that I've created and I've used just to guide teachers. If they don't know where to start, if they don't know what they want help with, there are some ideas on my coaching menu that I give teachers. It's a little bit more explicit, telling them what each of those things looks like. One thing that's really nice too is we have some great teachers in our district that do amazing things. And so another thing that I can do is I can say, you know what, I might not be the best person for you to watch. How about I take your class for the hour and you go watch this person teach it because she does a really good job. So I can also step in and help them identify people in our district that are good people to be their mentors and to help them work through some of the other issues if I don't have the answer. Because a lot of times I don't have the answers. So I try to help them find somebody who does. Another thing that we've started since we've been implementing Steve Dunn Writing is the coaching cycles. So a coaching cycle consists of me meeting with a teacher on a consistent basis for about 1 to 2 weeks. And I go in and I observe their classroom. So really getting into what is best practice in your classroom and how can we make sure that we're implementing this new curriculum in the appropriate way, but also then working through how to make sure kids are staying engaged. And when we have students that, again, need a little bit more support, how can we support them? So again, we focus on the instruction, the learning, the environment, and the engagement. So coaching cycles are something that's a little bit more new to our district, but we're working through those, and we have an opportunity to meet with every teacher. So I am at Roosevelt and Washington. So with having 2 buildings, I have about 18 teachers that I get to go in and do observations and work one-on-one with them. So it's been a really good experience, and we've learned a lot in the process. I'll have Emma talk some more about some of that.
My turn. Okay. You can see under teacher support, those are my bullet points. I was looking over them before presenting, and I started thinking what the theme is behind them, and it's motion. So I can do all of these things by myself, but the motion isn't very fast. I have before school starts and after school starts, and then a half an hour prep throughout the day. So Jada helps me stay in motion, and actually maybe gives me a little bit more of a shove than I expect that I can do. So she helps provide motion in the sense of curriculum support. I have new curriculum, I have old curriculum, I'm constantly looking at how I can look at other curriculum based on the students that I have, and she was there in support. One of the things she did, I think peeped like about 2 seconds. I said, hey, this would be really great to put together, and the next day she had it for me for the full year. And it would have taken me a while because I only have a limited amount of time away from students that I can do this work. One thing that coming up just this past week, we are working on doing our data meeting. She is able to bring all of the team members together very quickly, whereas I would have had to go to 3 different people and say, hey, can you meet during this time? So she is able to do that. She brings the agenda, gets the notes. She's the person who digs through the new assessment website, and when I say, hey, I can't find the data that I just collected, she can instantly email back because she's dug through that website and said, yep, here it is. So that's very helpful. Once again, we can do that, but there's a lot of classroom teachers, and she can just get the answer to us, which is great. She facilitates communication. She mentioned it earlier about how she can connect me with other teachers that either have that resource like down pat or have a suggestion. We don't function within real tight grade levels anymore. We meet the needs of the kids where they are, and last year I needed help finding a 1st grade level chapter book, and she connected me with a teacher at Gusner, and I had a book in my hand 2 days later. Something that I could have done going through and been looking at levels, but she was able to do it for me in a day. The other thing I think has been really important in the last year is the classroom scheduling support, and I know both team members are part of that. We have a lot of needs that we are meeting, and sometimes it's a 15-minute chunk of time, and I have to figure out how to get those kids to what teacher, who's available, and it would have taken me a really long time to know who to reach out to. Is it my title person? Is it my special ed person? And how it fits in. Now, we have our data meetings. Jada can look at our schedule and go, oh, so-and-so's available if we do this, this, and this, and now we have a chunk of time for our tier 2 students that would have taken me a really long time to find, or I wouldn't have had the resources to be able to do. So she supports that. And finally, the formal and informal checks. I just used her as I walked in. I said, hey, I was just using the new Pioneer Valley books. What's going on with the levels? And so before the meeting started, she cleared up a couple things. So I use her informally quite often. The more formal she mentioned in the coaching cycles. I participated in one based on writing last year, and this year I get to choose one of my own choice. So she'll be in my room next week until the 19th. So we'll be working together on a daily basis for that period. I think that's it. We're wrapping up.
I do want to clarify one thing. I should have mentioned this earlier. When it comes to evaluation, I had mentioned administrative, it aligns with our evaluation tool. The coaches don't evaluate teachers. They are essentially there for their support. They go in non-judgmental. They're not looking at what they can or can't do. They are there just to help bring them up. And so the evaluation still falls on the principal 100%. So I wanted to clarify that. Do you have any questions for us?
Any questions? Okay, I have a couple. Listen to what else says. How has, I know we've done this for a couple of years, but how receptive are the teachers, and what would you say would be probably some of the most effective things you've seen come from this?
Do you want to answer? Sure. I can, go ahead, I'll let you.
I would say that, well, my experience over at Roosevelt, because I taught there, so a lot of the teachers were very welcoming for me to come in right from the start. When I switched over to working at Washington, so we had a change of instructional coaches, it was a little bit different. So I think that all teachers are very receptive to having support. It's just the level of support and their comfort varies from person to person. I would say now, being in year 2 at Washington and even now at year 3 with Roosevelt, I've been in more classrooms and doing more stuff. I say stuff, but it's not stuff. I do a lot of different things.
Right,
But I would say that they're way more receptive, and they're getting, and it's new. So it's not
Sure.
something that they've always been used to, but it's definitely something that they are willing to reach out for and help for anything that they need.
Good.
I will say just, I mean, coming in new last year, it was a change for Washington to have somebody new come in, and not everybody was 100%, open and wanting that. But I think once they understood the role and what the intent was behind it, that we're not here to evaluate you, we're not here to tell you everything you're doing wrong, especially when
Right.
you have veteran teachers who,
Yeah.
they don't want somebody, especially somebody younger, coming in. It's a little bit hard. So that's kind of how I had to let them know to say, she's your resource. She is she's just like you, but a resource that spends the time to learn all the things that truthfully teachers really don't have time to do. As Emma had said, she's with students all day long. It's hard to take all the extra time to dig through things, where Jada has a little bit more time to do that. Anything you want to add? Oh, no. You good?
Well, I don't have any other questions. I think it's an awesome program. I really do. And like you said, as a resource for the teachers, and I think the more that you're out there giving that support, it has to help the classroom. It's helping the classroom. It's helping the teachers and the students. So I think that's awesome what you folks are doing. So thank you very much. Oh, there are a couple that spiked up. Okay, Gail, and then Heidi.
In looking at that, I noticed that it looks like there's a lot of trust that has been developed between the teaching staff and Jada. What are some things that you're doing to kind of build that trust? Because, having been in a classroom before, I think that would have been one of my major obstacles of having someone come in, that level of trust. So what are some things that are done to build that?
I will say, I will start by saying Jada and I are both pretty persistent. We're not going to throw in the towel very easily. So when there is that roadblock, which there has been, I'm not going to deny that, it's just constantly reaching out and letting them know we're here. We are here to support you. That's what our goal is, to give you what you need to be successful and help your students become successful. That's the ultimate goal. Because, yes, there are roadblocks. Do you have anything you want to add?
I think of back to my classroom time it's really all about the relationships. So you have to start by building those relationships with teachers, and just to say, we might not be ready to start on anything yet, but let's just have a conversation. Like, how's life? How are things going? So it really comes back to building up those relationships and knowing that at the beginning of the year, I also go and I have a coaching agreement that I create with all of my teachers, every single one, every year. It's probably, they're going to get bored of it pretty soon, but I sit down and I say, this is the agreement between us, is that this is a time for us. It's not a time for you to worry about what the admin has to say or what the teacher next door has to say. This is between us, and these conversations are private. If you have concerns, if we need to take this to somebody else, we can, but I'd want to be able to support you in any way that I can. So what do you need from me, and what am I going to do for you? So I try to make sure it's all about those relationships, building those up, and making sure teachers know that really I'm there for them in any way that they need me.
Heidi, Jim.
So Jada being a newer instructional coach, do you connect with the other instructional coaches for support, or how does that work? And with Joe, and do you have regular meetings, or how does that work?
Yep. So as an instructional coach team, we meet once a week on Friday for a half a day. So we meet on Friday, and we have an agenda, and we work through problems that we may have experienced in our building, or things that we know are coming up that we need to prep for. But it's not limited to that. I was talking to Mary today. So Mary is our instructional coach at Gusner, and she also covers Louis L'Amour. So we're in constant contact, and just making sure that we as a group are communicating the same message. So making sure that we're on the same page, and that all the teachers understand understand and hear the same thing. Yep.
Okay. Jason?
Currently, is any PLC time being utilized to help with our consistent message, or how is instructional coaches affecting PLCs, if at all? I don't know.
Personally, I attend the PLC, and the last week in the month, we meet as a team level, at a team level with all of our teachers from around the district, and I facilitate one meeting a month, and then the instructional coach does the other one that I work with, not Jada, but outside of that, and then she sets the agenda as well within the PLC framework. So within that portion, they're supporting. You do something else with Roosevelt.
Well, I was just going to speak on behalf of a few years ago, when they adopted Steve Dunn writing. That has been a really good thing for our district, number one. The ongoing PD has been super helpful. And so part of the PLC this year, since we didn't do it last year, we are taking one of our late starts, and we're devoting it just to writing to continue to support teachers, especially, some of those lower grades that no longer get the PD during this school year. They're actually offering on the last Wednesday of every month. The coaches actually are the ones who facilitate all of those PLCs, and it's devoted just to continue on with writing and let teachers talk about what's working, what's not working, and improving that process.
I was part of the leadership team that went down to the PLC Institute. And so at that time, I was at just Roosevelt, so I was just a single section. So in years past, a lot of the PLC stuff that we had done, we had specific training for our leadership team. So myself and the leadership team would create our presentation that we would bring back to our building so that we could convey that message and what the process is and the expectation was for our building. So I did a lot of that work with Roosevelt. Now, having two buildings the last 2 years, it's been a little bit different. This year, our time has been kind of really stretched, and so I haven't been over at Washington to help, but I've been more focused at Roosevelt because Wednesday is my day at Roosevelt to help facilitate teachers and move them through that process. So I'm really digging into each of the questions, and a lot of our time is spent in question one. So what do those things mean, and what artifacts should you produce so that we know that we're moving through and accomplishing what the PLC is meant for?
Just had maybe a comment or a question, and this was sort of touched on, and I just kind of want to bring it home here too. Before we reorganized our instructional coaching, when we would take on a new initiative as a district, sometimes large, Steve Dunn writing has been a pretty big initiative. Before instructional coaches, at least this reorganized focus for instructional coaches, that often fell to classroom teachers, who, as Mrs. Mickelson already mentioned, don't have a ton of extra time to research, how we're going to implement, or the administrator. And now there is a shared position, an instructional coach that can also take on implementation, some responsibilities for implementation and support for big initiatives. And could you maybe talk, I don't know who would be best to that, maybe Dr. Young, but just what has been the impact of instructional coaches? See, I still like to say that. Dr. Young just defended her dissertation not too long ago. So, but could you talk a little bit about the impact that instructional coaches and the role that they play for buildings in terms of bringing on a new initiative, like Steve Dunwriting?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely is probably not a shock. Teachers are overwhelmed. This is across the nation. They have a lot on their plates. And as I had addressed a little bit earlier, education has changed, and we can't expect teachers to come in and know how to take on this new way of teaching. We're expecting them to do small groups. We want them to differentiate. We want them to teach the low students, but also the ones who are flying high and are well above and beyond grade level. And so I think what I see the instructional coach and their role is just the ability to be able to really know the curriculum to be able to support the teachers. I guess teachers just don't have the time to go learn all those new things. And when you take on a new initiative, there's a lot to know. And, I look at the Steve Dunwriting, it was a very different way, and maybe Emma would want to speak on behalf of this, a very different way. They didn't even have, to my knowledge, a cohesive writing program. So then all of a sudden we're saying, okay, now we're going to teach 45 minutes of writing per day. That's a big shift, other than what they had been doing before, which is maybe, doing 10 minutes while they were teaching their ELA. Would you want to maybe speak on, I don't know if you have anything to share on that? No?
If somebody has a question, I can answer that about
Yeah.
it, but.
I mean, that's how I see it, is when you bring something in, it's hard. Change is hard for teachers. And so when you decide you want to bring something in, they always, not always, several will say, well, why are we doing this? Why can't we just do what we did before? And it's not that what we were doing before isn't necessarily good or bad. It's just we learn new things. And education is one career, in my opinion, that people like to just think it's okay to do what we did 10 years ago. Where I think if I'm going to have brain surgery, I want my surgeon to have the latest, greatest, research to be able to do something. So I think having another expert on board outside of just the administrator, because a lot of times teachers think that it's admin, top down. And so having another teacher on board, to me, really helps. Do you have anything you want to share?
Any other questions? Oh, you.
On the Washington perspective of that, I don't have a co-teacher to bounce things off, and Jada attends all of our trainings, so she is my sound wall. Do you remember when we did this in PD? And she'll be like, oh yeah, and then she can check her notes, and I can look at my notes and be on the same page or share. So that's only in 2 buildings that happens, but it is a benefit to have somebody who's attended what I've attended.
Any other questions? Well, as I said, I think what you're doing is awesome. You certainly have a supportive board, and we really appreciate your efforts out there and everything you're doing. So thank you very much, and I think you deserve applause.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item under Board Education, Strategic Competency, those that attended the ND SBA conference overview. So you can start with whoever wants to speak out first and let us know what you learned. Gail?
I really like the superintendent's form, and there was something that stuck with that Dr. Leck said, and it was about culture as we're looking for, to fill vacancies. And just how, that one struck me because that's going to be, I think, our biggest challenge as boards, not just here, but across the state. And like I said, in particular, the culture thing. And one of my favorite quotes is always that culture eats strategy for breakfast or lunch and dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And, something struck me back in my school counseling days when we measured things for, it was the ACE thing that we did as a school counseling department. When we talked to our students and surveyed them about culture, what my perceptions and what the actual culture were quite different, especially in a couple areas. So I'm wondering, do we have a means, or have we thought of how will we measure the culture we have in our buildings? Is the culture different from building to building? Do we have gaps in it? Was the culture perceived differently by those teachers who have left Jamestown? Or, just that issue kind of struck me, and maybe it's because of what I did forever. So that would be me. But that one I thought was very timely.
Thank you. Jason?
I'll go next because I attended the law seminar also, which included the forum of superintendents, and it was interesting, an interesting dynamic among the 5 people on the stage, because you had Mandan to Jamestown to Mandaree to Hillsborough and Alexander. And so all districts facing different challenges, yet a lot of them facing the same. And of course, the main topic of this panel was, like Mrs. Nelson said, recruiting and retaining, qualified staff. So it was interesting to see how, the Alexander and the Hillsborough superintendents were in between the larger district superintendents with, trying to keep pace and trying to keep themselves fully staffed too. So, but agree with what Mrs. Nelson said. A lot of it did come down to, even as a state, what kind of culture are we going to develop? How are we going to grow from within was talked about a lot too. Like, that's really probably our best bet, is that we need to promote the profession more. We need to promote the field more. But I see the challenge as that's going to be tough until we have a paradigm shift of some kind within the state about why are we promoting this? Because it's a good paying job, it's fulfilling, it's okay. So I guess nothing really new or earth-shattering, but having gone through COVID, I think provided a different perspective of this too. So to me, it comes down to promoting the profession and creating a culture in Jamestown and the state even, as far as how are we going to attract and keep quality people in the classroom. So I thought that was very informational. And then there were a couple other seminars. There was one on, cannabis and some of those things coming down, and then also some COVID-19, just mandates, regulation, federal things. So it was a good day, and people were saying how it was a little more exciting than other previous law seminars, and I thought it was exciting, but it was just an interesting time for everyone to be back together and hearing some of the stuff. So,
Thank you. Anyone else? Roger?
I'll go next. One of the outbreak sections I had was, can online learning work for kids? And it was put on by the Center of Distance Education. And so it was kind of a different view from them. They're saying that online learning does work. And I think when you throw pandemic into it, and then you throw teachers into learning how to do Zooming and so on, I got 2 different messages, one from the distance learning thing, and the complaints were, when people are thrown into the situation of the kids are learning, the teachers are learning, and everything else, that's where the bad rep on distance learning came from. So, but they were promoting distance learning as good learning and there's certain classes and stuff you need that in other schools that need the distance learning also, because they don't have teachers able to come in. And then the speaker, at the beginning of and I was there only on Friday, but the speakers are always good. They're just motivated, and I think there was to lead is to teach was his presentation, and it was just you come away from there having a good feeling about being a part of a board and public education. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else? Dan?
Well, I had to attend the new school board member session, so that was interesting. But Dr. Leck and Dr. Larson prepared me very well before that, so it was actually felt like old news. Did attend a couple of sessions that kind of intertwined. One from Northern Cass, presentation on personalized learning, and the major cultural shift that they've made there to help better serve students meeting the needs they want for what they want for the future. So looking, what will students want to do 5 years after graduation, and how do we prepare them for the very different paths that kids are going to take? And that tied hand in hand with the competency-based learning seminar. Got a lot of very detailed discussion about how that framework was set up. And it's a good seminar when you end up with 13 pages of notes over only a couple hours of discussion. So I'm really interested in unpacking that and how that could tie in with the culture discussion that we want to have here in Jamestown.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? Melissa, of course.
I think I went to the most fun demonstration of seminar there. I went on Friday, and it was one that came in at the last minute, and it was called Beating the Odds, and using basically drums to help with emotional and social behavior. But it also had a lot of different things that they kind of taught us just in that short amount of time. Just how to get people to be able to know what they were, how their mood was and things with people who maybe wouldn't speak otherwise, but by just making a certain motion on the drum or something, and being able to use that in not only classrooms of kids with social and emotional behaviors, but also one of the superintendents said she was going to go back to her school and use it to even just find out how the teachers were feeling in the mornings, so I thought too it was something that a lot of homes, there were so many different, they didn't get into all of the different stuff that you could do, but just really a unique way of drawing information out from somebody in a nonverbal fashion. And that's something that I was thinking would be kind of even fun to bring in as training for teachers as well as families and parents. So.
Very good.
And about
Yes.
that, is this the one that they have trained different people in throughout the state?
Yes.
Because I think my son did that training on drums, and then they have students make them and use them, and he did it as a music teacher, but he thought it was, he spoke really highly of the training and incorporating it. So I wondered if that was a similar, they train usually before school starts in the summer with, very cool. I would have loved that one. But that's why I'm glad everyone brings a different one, because then I can, learn more.
Very good. Well, that's all good, and now I'm going to get you all probably upset at me and along with Amy, but if there was one thing that you thought that would be beneficial for our district, if you could just send that to Amy, and if she could just put that together. Now, we don't want a page. I mean, I'm thinking bullet point with a couple of key items that you think that you learned that might benefit our district, and then maybe, when we go to strategic training or at some point, we could at least take a look at that, because I used to always do that when I went to seminars, and so I think if you don't have anything, don't feel obligated, but if there's something, so then she can kind of coordinate that and have that available to us, I would appreciate it. Okay? Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Okay. Item E is old business. Doesn't appear we have any. Item F is new business. Number 1, activities. Nothing there. Buildings and grounds. Nothing new. We do have updates to the summer projects, but that's just informational. Curriculum, assessment, instruction. Oh, yes, please.
So we are currently, in terms of facility projects, we are currently in the design, what would be called the design process. And so we are meeting with architects and engineers. We're slated for those projects we have already approved at Jamestown High School, Jamestown Middle School, Gustner Elementary. And I wanted to give you just a little update of what that looks like and what you can expect as a board throughout this whole design process. So there's an action log that I have included. You can take a look at that. That is essentially what has already been initiated and completed in terms of process, and the action log will be a kind of a continuing dialogue of things that are going on that our construction manager is coordinating. They've also created anticipated schedules timeline schedules for Gusner, the middle school and high school for those big projects. As we had our design, or our most recent design meeting, one of the biggest areas of concern was the turnaround for our prefabricated metal buildings. If you remember the health and wellness area that's going to the north of the high school, there's really a pretty significant concern about costs and what those costs have, what we're seeing costs increase to in prefabricated metal buildings. But even beyond that, it's the turnaround time for ordering to receipt. And so, this is one of those areas we're really fortunate that we do have a construction manager that can manage and coordinate the bid process. And so Mike Barsness at Consolidated Construction is working on bid schedules to try to mitigate this timeline as much as we can. But it's going to likely be very problematic for us, but it's just something to be aware of. And we're meeting with twice a month with that team. And Mike Barsness from Consolidated Construction is going to come to our next facility committee meeting, which we just sent out a meeting invite for earlier today for, remind me, the 17th at 4 o'clock so when we do updated meetings, the 17th, right? Yes, it was the 9th. There were 2 dates. It's the 9th. You're right. Tuesday the 9th at 4 o'clock in the central office conference room. But Mike Barsness from Consolidated will be there to kind of talk through with the facility committee progress, where we're at, allow them to ask questions if they have any about the process and what they're seeing. But again, I feel really fortunate that we do have a construction manager that is helping this, because otherwise it would fall on in the time of ESSER, which is getting a lot of our time. Would throw another log on the fire that would make that very challenging to meet any kind of timeline. And so having that CMAR is really going to be very, very valuable. But just wanted to provide a quick update to the board.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Dr. Luck, could you or one of the other board members in attendance of that facilities committee just report out on, because that sounds like an important meeting, a lot of good information, just report out the next meeting, because I don't think, we don't want additional board members coming because of, potential of a quorum, but if we could just have a good report out on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, we'll have minutes for sure, and then we can do a report as well.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you. We didn't have anything on the curriculum assessment and instruction. Item 4, finance, we have approval of the agreement with AVEL for e-care services, which Dr. Leck did discuss in some detail during his report, but we do need an action. Motion by Roger, second by Gail, to approve the agreement with AVEL for e-care services. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor. Item 6, policy and procedures, nothing tonight. Item 7, tuition, approval of a tuition agreement for a pre-K student to attend Montpelier Public Schools for the 2021-22 school year.
Mr. President?
Yes.
These are all going to Montpelier. Can we make one motion? I make a motion to approve 3 preschoolers, 1 first grader in kindergarten, Jamestown, going to Montpelier Public School. I'd make that motion.
So that would be items A through D. If the board is in agreement with that and consist, okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve items A through D, which are tuition agreements for pre-K students to attend Montpelier Public Schools for the 2021-22 school year. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 8 under other, we have that regular board schedule revision, which was discussed during Dr. Leck's report of changing that one date in December. What would you like to do? Okay, motion by Heidi to reschedule, second by Roger. We have a motion and a second to reschedule the date in December. Any discussion? Jason?
The delay in this, is it extenuating circumstance? Is it something we'll have to maybe look at every year, or?
No, not really extenuating circumstance. It's more the schedule. If you look at, we normally in December and January have one meeting. So we had the first meeting or the December meeting originally was scheduled to be the first Monday. The meeting in January was the third Monday, so a fairly significant gap of time. And the auditors simply wouldn't have the time to get that completed. And so if we don't do the audit in December, we would have to wait till the third Monday in January, just the length of time. And we need to have it done by December 31st. So we'd have to have a special board meeting.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, item B is the annual review of the MOU with James River Medical Center for Disaster Shelter. I would entertain a motion. Motion by Gail. Second by Roger, to enter into this MOU, which we actually have done annually with James River Medical Center for Disaster Shelter. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any items for future agenda other than the report out that was requested by Heidi? Okay. Item A, meetings to be scheduled. The district improvement meeting on Thursday, November 4th, 2021 at 3:30 p.m. in Thompson Community Room. Item B is the health insurance meeting, which will be on Monday, November 8th at 3:45 p.m. in the multipurpose room, conference room. Item C is the our regular school board meeting, which will be November 15th at 5:15 here in Thompson. And item D is the facilities update that will be November 9th.
SEC also has a meeting this Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. and I was notified late this afternoon that is going to be a virtual meeting, so their information, how to access that, should be on the SEC website.
Okay, and when is that?
Wednesday, the 3rd,
Okay.
at 11:30 a.m.
Okay, thank you. Any other meetings to be scheduled? Okay, the monthly superintendent evaluation, sections 2, board relations, and sections 5, community relations. And I know a note went out because we want to get the annual review done. If you have not completed yours, please take the time to complete it. Amy did put together notifications and sent them out. She didn't give me any names who she sent them to, so I don't have anyone to whack tonight. But please, get them done, get them in so we can meet our schedule and get that portion complete. And again, at the end, if you would click on the adjournment, you can put in your thoughts on how the meeting went tonight. And with that, thank you all for coming, and we stand adjourned.